Now, signs of a third force in the run-up to the 2022 general election are becoming clearer after the One Kenya Alliance announced it is working on a deal with the Mount Kenya Unity Forum leaders. The forum, led by now Kenya Party leader Martha Karua, National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi, among other current and former Mount Kenya politicians, said they would be looking for more allies to build the alliance. And as KTN's Emmanuel Torre reports, the season of defections is fast gathering momentum.
After hours of closed-door meeting held in a Nairobi hotel between the One Kenya Alliance principals and the Mount Kenya Forum, the leaders emerged with a brief joint statement with a statement of their newfound working relationship ahead of the 2022 elections.
We came together to explore possibilities of working together. We belong to Kenya, and none of us can do it alone. So that's what today's meeting is all about.
The meeting, which was attended by all OKA principals, including KANU chairman Gideon Moi, NC's Musalia Mudavadi, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, and Ford Kenya's Moses Wetangula, was aimed at strengthening their pact with the Mount Kenya Forum to clinch the power next year.
The dynamism of politics at play. We must always come together, think together, talk together, and act together. OKA and Mount Kenya Unity Forum have started a journey of moving together.
The leaders have now vowed to continue with the conversation and include new political friends as the race to the 2022 polls gears up.
We have had a very fruitful meeting this morning, and more meetings will follow. And we only can urge Kenyans to watch this space.
The development now continues to bolster the OKA side as a formidable third force to wrestle ODM leader Raila Odinga and Deputy President William Ruto in next year's polls.
Asanteni sana.
Emmanuel Torre, KTN News, Nairobi.
Watch this space. That's a statement from that newly found caucus bringing together the One Kenya Alliance and the Mount Kenya Unity Forum. Very interesting happenings this past week. Dismas Mukua, I know in previous discussions, very many people have been quick to dismiss the kind of impact a third force would have, but seeing the kind of numbers even just standing around that podium and the kind of names around that, can we really afford to dismiss them again?
Well, you know, Fred, when you look at the political space, the major players, for some reason, they've created the narrative that it's going to be a two-horse race, so that Kenyans are given binary choices, that it's either Raila or Ruto. But when you see what One Kenya Alliance is doing, they're trying to fashion themselves as an alternative. And in my view, we need to encourage many more presidential candidates to come up and form coalitions and form alliances so that Kenyans are spoiled for choice. You know, in an election whereby you've been limited to only two persons or two candidates, then you lose capacity to engage in a decision-making process. So in my view, what the One Kenya Alliance is doing is something that they need to be given a pat on the back, and it would be only a naive person who would dismiss One Kenya Alliance and the Mount Kenya Unity Forum as a waste of time. Because all these are national leaders, they've got specific constituencies, and they want to address a gap in our political conversation. Because you notice among all the presidential candidates, in as much as everybody is talking about economics, there is no one who is actually giving us was identified the critical path analysis and the key success factors of turning around our economy the way One Kenya Alliance has done through Musalia Mudavadi. So in my view, let's encourage anybody who has capacity to become the president of Kenya to come up and give us these policies. They give us their track record of success, they give us their numbers, they give us their strategies, so that Kenyans have got capacity to make a choice. But if you're going to be limited to only two candidates, then it may not work. But again, as we approach the 2022 elections, then all these presidential candidates have to look at the crystal ball, they have to look at the scoreboard, and then evaluate their probability of winning. Because, you know, running for a presidential campaign is a very serious task. It requires a lot of mental energy, it requires a lot of financial resources. So in as much as, again, we may have so many presidential candidates, they're well advised that you run when you've got a reasonable chance of winning, so that we don't, again, end up with a list of 100 presidential candidates, while in fact, you only probably have 3 or 4 who are serious.
Okay. Mark Bichachi, a lot can be said about the kind of people around that podium. And when so many, because that number is huge by any standards, we've seen this before when it came to coalitions. We saw this in 2002 when all these other politicians came together and supported one candidate to face Uhuru Kenyatta in Kanu back then, and how it turned out. Definitely, there's something to be said about this kind of unity that we're seeing around that podium.
Fred, the key word there is unity. And for me, any group of leaders who sits and chooses to unify a people and chooses to make it an agenda to unify a people is critical. The other day, Fred, I had a chance to talk to a foreign investor, and this is the kind of person who puts hundreds of millions of dollars into countries. And I asked him, what is the most critical thing when you look at a country to invest? So number one, he said, lack of corruption. The less corrupt a country, the better. But number two, and which was so critical to me, was the unity of the country and the ability for it to have periods of peace and periods of peaceful transition. Now, this cannot be underplayed. One of the things that we need to accept is in the last 5 years where there was not such vicious antagonism between Nyanza and Central, for example, we've seen a lot more peace, a lot more tranquility happen. So when we see the same thing happening with Martha Karua and the Mount Kenya Unity Forum, reaching across the divide and talking to the Mudavadis of the day, of the Wetangulas of the day, you might not agree with their politics, you might not agree with a lot of the things that they do, but you have to agree that unity is a central theme and a central issue for our country. But secondly, what is good about this is that the number is so big that it cannot be about positions. Not all of them can be running mates. Not all of them can be CSs, and not all of them can even run for office in the next election. And this is the critical thing, because we must stop the politics of power for power's sake and get into the politics of purpose and a need that you're trying to meet for the Kenyan people. This is the critical thing. But my final statement is this. One of the realities of the first past the post system, the same system that is in the United States. Yes, the United States has many parties beyond the Democrats and the Republicans. But because of that 50% plus one, there begins to be a lot more pressure to create a coalition or to back a candidate who's most likely to hit that 50% plus one. So in as much as we need third races all the way into the 10th horse, the truth is, when it comes to the mathematics, that 50% plus one matters, and it matters a lot.
Numbers do not lie, and according to recent polls, without quoting any in particular, none of the candidates running for the top job has that approval rating so far. None of them has hit 50%. So definitely, a third force will come into play at some point. Hesbon, have we finally gotten the right formula for a third force?
Fred, I think it's very encouraging to see OKA and the Mount Kenya team, have a conversation around having a third force. And as Dismas rightly puts it, we are better off as a society if we have a multiplicity of choices, because then these competing forces would have to present their ideas in the public domain and would be presented with as many ideas to evaluate and end up with the right idea. But the reality of the country that we live in tells us that if you're going to have a third force, then essentially what we are looking at is a runoff. Because you do the permutations of the votes that the three forces are likely to get, and that is a big assumption we are making here, that the coalition between Martha Karua-led team and OKA would actually come to fruition and have a coalition up to the ballot. I think that's an assumption we're making here. But even if we were to make that assumption, what essentially means is that if you do the calculations, then it would be very difficult for any of the three formations, that is the one led by Martha Karua and the OKA team, the Deputy President and the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, to have 50+1. It's going to be impossible. Then number two, and without the assumption, politics being what it is, we know what is happening right now. it does appear that forces that would form the next government will definitely gravitate towards either the deputy president or the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And therefore, there is probably a high likelihood that this Mount Kenya group and OKA team is essentially coming together just to, hold some sort of cloud in terms of threatening to have a third force and leverage on the fact that they can be a force to, position themselves strongly in either Raila's formation or in the deputy president's formation. Because what happens in most political parties is when they know that they are losing clout, they will find something that would prop them up in the public domain and enhance their clout. So we've seen what the deputy president has done, and it's massive that he has gone all over the country. And whatever the Hustler Nation is, it's a powerhouse in our politics going into 2022. And then we've seen what Raila Odinga has done. And we know the history of Raila Odinga. He's such an enigma of Kenyan politics that it is not shocking anyone that he's making significant inroads in the Mount Kenya region. And as he's doing that, we are seeing the jittery in the Hustler Nation's camp. But still, be it as it may, these are the two major camps. And I can tell you that there is a sense in which the coming together of OKA and the Martha Karua-led team is basically to call the attention of these two politicians, that we may not have the numbers, but at least when we come together, we might be a formidable force.
Okay.
Therefore, I don't really see any third force emerging, at least not any third force that is marshaled by Martha Karua and the OKA team. The OKA team is essentially looking for that relevance so that they leverage, with a bigger stake with Raila Odinga. That is essentially what they are looking at.
Okay.
And from where I sit, there's only one problematic, principle in the OKA team. And this is a principle that if Raila and his team were very serious, they would leverage on the capital that Raila can hand over to any other person and just tell them that it's not a question of me endorsing anyone going forward. It's essentially a question of what do you bring and to what extent will you be among the peers who will come in to support me, command the capital that I will have. And this is something that I've said over and over again, that you're waiting for that one principle in OKA who would decide that it's not about the 2022 general election, but more about the subsequent elections and how I can tap on the massive political capital that Raila Odinga has. Okay.
Thank you, Hesbon. And of course, it's also a very big assumption that you're making that this team may not necessarily stick together up until the election day. But there's something to be said about the kind of people there. Ken Echesa Wakili, we've not seen this kind of grouping as a third force previously. Usually, when you bring together people from different regions of the country, it's usually at the level of probably the top two candidates. We've seen the NASA Alliance. We've seen other formations like the one that preceded just President Mwai Kibaki. This time around, we are seeing a force, but it's not being well, according to the analysts, they're not seeing it as being big enough to equal the level of the top two candidates. Don't you think that probably that assumption is wrong?
I think the assumption is not wrong, Fred. And the last time, to the best of my memory, the last time we had a serious third force emerging was a third force of the people who walked out on Moi and joined Raila Odinga in LDP and other like-minded fellas before they decided to back Kibaki by saying Kibaki Tosha. That was a serious third force away from Uhuru Kenyatta's candidature in 2002 and Mwai Kibaki's. And I must come to the present discussion and say, from my informed opinion, OKA is built on quicksand. It is not a third force that Kenyans can rely on, and it will not survive the test of time. I think OKA, if it lives long, it may not go beyond February of this year for the following reasons. OKA does not represent diversity. The Mount Kenya Forum has come out as a Mount Kenya Forum is a tribal political forum. And we have no problem with that. We have tribal political forums throughout the country that can enter negotiations on behalf of their regions. But OKA is purporting to be a national alliance when 3 of the 5 principles are from the Luhya community. We have Cyrus Jirongo, we have Moses Wetangula, we have Musalia Mudavadi. Then the other principles, Kalonzo Musyoka, has a formidable ground in Ukambani. Gideon Moi, another principle, actually comes out as an alternative leader in the Kalenjin community, which is quite good. But look at the other principles. And when you look at the objective principles of OKA, and by objective I mean Gideon Moi and Kalonzo Musyoka, they are open-minded, they are open to reality, and they know that elections cannot be won without building reliable coalitions. And this explains why Gideon has always been very open, Gideon has always been very candid, and even muled with the possibility of working with Odinga. And Gideon is on record as having said Raila Odinga is part of OKA. Kalonzo Musyoka had the honor of inviting Raila Odinga to the Wiper NDC. What does this tell you? It tells you that 2 of these principles are open to working with either of the leading presidential aspirants, and more likely Raila Odinga. But come to Western Kenya. It's like every county is producing a principle in OKA. Vihiga has produced Mudavadi as a principle. Kakamega has produced Jirongo as a principle. Bungoma and Trans Nzoia have produced Wetangula as a principle in OKA. And even Ford Kenya, one of the parties in OKA, is in all formations. Ford Kenya is in Azimio la Umoja. You know that we had a coup in Ford Kenya, and Wafula Wamunyinyi became a party leader, and that thing is disputed. And therefore, Wafula Wamunyinyi, as part of Ford Kenya, has taken his Ford Kenya to Raila Odinga. Chris Wamalwa, the so-called current SG of Ford Kenya, of course, the SG with the registrar is Silas Semeyo, is in William Ruto's camp. So Wetangula has planted his people strategically in all these camps. If Wetangula loses Ford Kenya, the Wamunyinyi wing is with Raila Odinga, or the Wamalwa wing is with William Ruto. And then for Musalia, which political value does he bring on board? If it is Kakamega, he will have to fight it out with Wycliffe Oparanya. If it is Bungoma, he has to fight it off with the Wangamati, Lusaka, Eugene Wamalwa forces. If it is in Vihiga, his own governor is an ODM fella, and Luanda and Mohaya are more likely to vote for Raila Odinga even within Vihiga. So let us be realistic. Even with the Mount Kenya Forum, even with the OKA principles, without Kalonzo and Gideon Moi, what is their political value to this formation? Politics is about numbers. Politics is not about polished English, is not about dressing in suits and addressing media in posh hotels. It is about the numbers that you bring on board. Definitely, it's a game of numbers. And when it comes to marshalling these numbers, either through parties or coalitions, those are the 2 ways we've seen. And there's a story on page 5 of the Standard, and I want to refer to this when it comes to the next discussion. And this is about parties or coalitions. And it's on page 8. The Deputy President says, "Fold your parties, ditch ethnic talk if you want to join me." We've seen this method before. The Jubilee Party insisted on parties folding up and merging into one political outfit. ODM has tried working in an alliance with the other parties, and of course, ODM was accused of being a bully. That kind of alliance did not work out. We are seeing that kind of attempt right now as well. UDA becoming a very formidable party, if at all it will absorb and kill other parties around it for its own strength. And then that's a conversation now we have. Do you think this kind of approach, the one we saw with Jubilee, will work this time round? We've seen Mount Kenya resisting this kind of attempts. They've formed so many different parties. This past weekend, I think Kiraitu Murungi launched a different party, the Devolution Party. Do you think this time round it will work? One strong party vis-a-vis a coalition, Dismas?
Well, in my view, what the Deputy President says deserves specific attention. And that is the path that we need to follow as a nation. When you look at Kenya, when we introduced multi-party democracy, when President Moi repealed Section 2A through a delegates conference, and then it got entrenched in our constitution, what we envisaged is Kenya with strong national political parties. There's a political party which is anchored on very specific policies, on very specific ideas that can run the show. That when you look at this political party, say if it's a UDA, you can actually tell what UDA is all about. If you look at the Democrats or Republicans in the US, you can tell what they're about. If you look at CCM, you know what it's all about. If you look at ANC in South Africa, you know what it's all about. If you look at the economic freedom fighters under Malema, you know what they're all about. And the position taken by the Deputy President, William Samoei Ruto, in my view, is a position that we need to highlight and assist and encourage Kenyans to join political parties that are anchored on very strong ideas and philosophies. But the tragedy we have in Kenya today is that most of the political parties are special purpose vehicles owned by powerful politicians, and everything is done at the pleasure of the party leader. That is why the party primaries are hardly free, fair, nor credible, because if the party leader doesn't like you, probability of winning is almost zero. As we have this conversation, every powerful political personality in Kenya has got a political party. I think so far we have about 80 political parties in Kenya. So the latest one of the bus. Now, Lonyangapu started his political party, then you have Kaboga's got his own political party. So what are all these political parties all about? In my view, it's these powerful persons, they want to immunize themselves from rigged party primaries. But more importantly, number two, they want to be in the conversation. And you can tell from their language. They say that they want to be in the conversation so that when people are dividing the pie, they get a bit of that piece. So what they've done is they've misled Mora and Wanjiru and Anyango into believing that they're in fact serving their selfish interest, or rather community selfish interest or national selfish interest, but while in fact they're serving their individual interest. Okay. And in my view, rational voters, and also, I mean, as we go towards the general election, they should punish these one-man political parties, okay, because they're a drain on our economy and they're suffocating the political space, and the only thing they're doing is their party leaders are pushing selfish interests.
Okay, Mark Bechurch, yes.
There is no political party in Kenya simply because Kenyans do not pay membership fees. There is nothing you can belong to that costs you nothing. For as long as a political party is run from my wallet, guess what? It can be called the People's Freedom Movement. But if it is run from my wallet, make no mistake, it is my party. So whether you want to join OD what, UD what, all of those parties, for as long as the individual voter is not participatory in terms of economic viability of that party, you cannot say it is your party. Make no mistake, in any sort of system across the world, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Okay. So let us ask, who funds our political parties? And then ask, are we really members or just simply people escorting people to their parades?
Most of these political parties are actually, or rather a number of them are funded by taxpayers.
Okay, okay. The big ones, of course. Time now for a break, and when we come back, we get to hear your views of the show. We're sharing the number on your screen right now. Give us a call. Let us know what you think about this, and I'll give my panelists a final opportunity to give their thoughts as well much later on the show.